A tropical low is developing in the Coral Sea. This system has potential to bring significant impacts to parts of Queensland this weekend and into early next week. Worth paying close attention to if you're anywhere along the coast from Cairns south to the Sunshine Coast. I've been examining the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, cross-referencing multiple weather models and monitoring current conditions right across the region. There is still some uncertainty about the exact track and intensity, but the broad pattern is becoming clearer. Let me walk you through what we know, what we don't know, and what you need to be prepared for. Right now, across far North Queensland, conditions are typical for this time of year, but uncomfortable all the same. Innisfail hit the mid-30s today with high humidity. Cairns has been super humid, desperately needing rain. Townsville sitting at 35 degrees with 80% humidity. That is the kind of sticky, oppressive heat that makes it hard to get anything done. Compare that to what's happening further south. The Gold Coast has been a fair bit cooler with some decent winds coming through. Brisbane copped a ripper of a storm yesterday arvo with heavy rain and a nice shelf cloud. Some areas saw significant totals. But overall, Brisbane had very poor rain this summer. Areas like Aspley have been particularly dry. Just unprecedented how little rain has fallen in what is normally a wet season. Nambour in the same boat. Storms keep forming, then dissipating before they arrive. Frustrating when you can see the rain on the radar but never get a drop. Out west, places like Charleville got a little rain recently, but it's still dry overall. Central Australia is crying out for decent rain. The Riverland in South Australia is bone dry. No rain since the end of November in some areas. When the drought eventually breaks out there, you'll see some very happy farmers. That's the current situation. Dry through the interior, patchy rain along the coast, and oppressive humidity building across the tropics. That humidity is key to understanding what's about to develop. The Coral Sea tropical low we're retracking is forming in an environment with plenty of warm water and high moisture content. Sea surface temperatures are sitting well above average for this time of year. That fuel for tropical systems. The question isn't whether this system will develop. The question is how much it develops and where it tracks. Let me break down what the models are showing. The Access model, that is the Bureau's own modelling system, shows this low forming over the next 48 hours in the central Coral Sea. The system then tracks generally westward toward the Queensland coast. Arrival time looks to be sometime Saturday into Sunday. The GFS model, the American Global model, shows similar timing but with a slightly different track. It takes the system a bit further north, potentially making landfall somewhere between Cairns and Townsville. The European model, often the most reliable for tropical systems, sits somewhere in between. It shows the low developing Saturday, then tracking toward the coast with landfall most likely Sunday or Monday somewhere between Townsville and Mackay. Here where it gets tricky. There is still significant spread between the models on intensity. Some runs show this remaining a weak tropical low with limited impacts. Other runs show it intensifying into a more significant system. At this stage, I'd put my money on something in between. Not a cyclone, but certainly not a weak, disorganised low either. The key factors to watch are upper level winds and wind shear. Right now, the environment is reasonably favourable for development. Light to moderate wind shear, plenty of moisture, warm sea surface temperatures. But there's an upper level trough approaching from the west that could increase shear and disrupt the system's organisation. If that trough arrives early, the system stays weak and disorganised. If the trough arrives late, the system has more time to intensify before it hits the coast. We're talking about timing differences of 12 to 24 hours that could make a significant difference to impacts. Now, let us talk about what this means for specific areas. I'll work from north to south because that is the most logical way to break this down. Far North Queensland, from Cooktown down to Cairns and the Cassowary Coast. You are looking at increased rain and wind from Saturday afternoon. Initially, this might be welcome. I know Cairns has been desperate for rain to break the humidity, but we are not talking about a gentle soaking rain. We are talking about heavy, intense falls with thunderstorms embedded. Rainfall totals could reach 100 to 200 millimetres over a 24 to 48 hour period. Some locations could see more if the system stalls or slow-moving bands set up. That is a fair bit of rain in a short time. Flash flooding becomes a concern, particularly in areas with poor drainage or steep terrain. Wind-wise, expect gusts to 50 to 70 kilometres per hour, possibly higher if the low intensifies more than currently expected. Not destructive winds, but enough to bring down tree branches, cause power outages and make driving conditions hazardous. Townsville and the North Queensland coast down to Mackay. This is where uncertainty is highest about direct impacts. If the system tracks north, as some models suggest, you will see rain and wind, but nothing too extreme. If it tracks south, you could be looking at the most significant impacts. Current thinking has this region in the firing line Sunday into Monday. Heavy rain likely, with totals of 100 to 150 millimetres widespread. Localised areas could see significantly more. The Herbert River, Burdekin River and other catchments will respond quickly to heavy rain. Minor to moderate flooding is possible. Winds will be stronger here if the low passes close by. Gusts to 80 kilometres per hour, possibly higher right near the centre. That S45 knots for those on the water. Small craft should definitely stay in port. Larger vessels need to monitor conditions closely. Southeast Queensland from the Whitsundays down through Mackay, Rockhampton, Bundaberg and into the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane. URE on the southern fringe of potential impacts. Whether you see significant weather depends entirely on that track. If the low tracks further north, you'll see increased cloud, scattered showers, maybe an isolated storm or two. Nothing major. If it tracks further south or if associated cloud bands extend well south of the centre, you could see heavier falls. Brisbane has been asking for rain. The catchments need it. But this system probably isn't the answer. Most models keep the heaviest rain north of the Sunshine Coast. Brisbane might pick up 20 to 50 millimetres if a decent band moves through. That D be welcome, but it is not a drought breaker. The weather pattern overall favours northern areas. Southern southeast Queensland likely misses the worst of it. Now let's talk about the marine situation because this affects a lot of people. Fishing fleet, recreational boaters, island resorts, anyone working offshore. The Coral Sea will become very rough from Friday afternoon through the weekend. Seas building to 3 to 5 metres, possibly higher near the low centre. Wind waves on top of that. Confused seas, poor visibility in rain and unpredictable conditions as the low develops. The Queensland coast from Cape York down to about Mackay will see deteriorating conditions Saturday. Seas to 3 metres, winds to gale force near the low. This is not weather to be out in. Secure your vessels well in advance. Double check mooring lines. Move boats to protected anchorages if possible. For those on offshore islands, Thursday and Friday are your windows to stock up on supplies or evacuate if needed. Once conditions deteriorate Saturday, marine transport becomes difficult and potentially dangerous. One viewer asked about this system behaving like tropical cyclone Alfred. That's an interesting comparison. Alfred, if you remember, formed in similar conditions earlier in the season. It tracked close to the coast, brought heavy rain, but never quite intensified into a strong system. This low could follow a similar pattern. The ingredients are there for development, but whether it all comes together is still uncertain. The key difference is timing. Alfred had more time over open water to organise. This system is forming closer to the coast with less time to develop before landfall. Another viewer mentioned the solar flare that occurred recently, asking if it could intensify the system. I'll be honest, there's no established scientific link between solar activity and tropical cyclone intensity. The primary drivers are sea surface temperature, atmospheric moisture, wind shear and upper level dynamics. Solar flares can affect space weather and potentially influence the upper atmosphere, but they don't directly intensify tropical systems at the surface level. What matters for this low is the oceanic and atmospheric environment it's moving through. And right now, that environment is marginally favourable but not overwhelmingly supportive of rapid intensification. Let me address fire weather briefly because it has been a concern across many parts of Australia. The southern states are dealing with elevated fire danger this weekend. Hot, dry and windy conditions across Victoria, South Australia and southern New South Wales. This tropical low 1 to help those areas. The weather pattern has the moisture trapped in the tropics. Southern areas stay dry with offshore winds. Fire danger ratings will be high to very high across parts of Victoria and South Australia Saturday and Sunday. If you in fire-prone areas down south, now is the time to check your bushfire plan. Make sure gutters are clean, defendable space is maintained, and you know what you will do if fire threatens. Don't wait until Saturday when conditions deteriorate. The contrast across Australia right now is stark. Oppressive heat and building moisture in the tropics. Dry heat and fire weather in the south. Cool conditions in Tasmania with overnight minimums below zero in some areas. The temperature spread from Darwin to Hobart is massive. That's typical for this time of year, but worth noting because it shows how localised these weather patterns are. What happens in Queensland has no bearing on what's happening in Victoria or South Australia. Each region is dealing with its own distinct weather system, back to the tropical low. Timing is critical for planning purposes. Here's what I am seeing as the most likely timeline based on current model consensus. Thursday. System begins to organise in the central Coral Sea. Conditions start deteriorating offshore. Marine users should be making final preparations Friday. Low becomes better defined. Movement toward the coast begins. Increased cloud over North Queensland. Scattered showers develop, particularly across the ranges. Seas continue to build. Saturday. System approaches the coast. Heavy rain develops across far North Queensland and North Queensland. Winds increase. Coastal areas see deteriorating conditions through the afternoon and evening. This is when impacts really begin. Sunday. Low makes landfall or passes close to the coast. Heaviest rain and strongest winds. Flash flooding possible in areas receiving intense rainfall rates. Rivers begin to rise. Travel becomes difficult across affected areas. Monday. System weakens as it moves inland or interacts with the coast. Rain continues but intensity decreases. Winds ease gradually. Flood situation becomes clearer as rivers peak. Tuesday. System dissipates inland. Residual showers and storms continue but organised system is gone. Clean-up and assessment of impacts begins. That is the broad timeline. Could shift by 12 to 24 hours depending on how quickly the system develops and moves. The Bureau of Meteorology will issue updated warnings as the situation evolves. Pay attention to those. They'll have the most current information. For those asking about Brisbane impacts from this system, at this stage, unlikely to be significant. You might see some rain, bit of wind, but nothing like what northern areas will experience. The system S-track and intensity both favour areas north of the Sunshine Coast. That said, keep monitoring forecasts. If the track shifts south, that changes things. If associated rain bands extend further south than expected, you could see heavier falls. But based on current information, Brisbane S looking at minor impacts at most. Nambour and the Sunshine Coast hinterland might see slightly more action. URE right on that boundary between significant impacts and minor effects. Could go either way. Have a plan just in case, but don't panic. Gold Coast looks to stay well south of major impacts. You'll see increased cloud and humidity, maybe a shower or storm, but that's about it. The cooler change you've been experiencing will help keep you out of the worst conditions. Now, for practical advice, what should you actually do to prepare if you're in far North Queensland or North Queensland in the potential impact zone? Check your property now, secure loose items, clean gutters, ensure drains are clear. If you've got livestock, make sure they have access to high ground and shelter. Stock up on essentials, not panic buying, just sensible preparation. Water, non-perishable food, medications, batteries, torches. If the power goes out, you want to be comfortable for a few days until services are restored. Charge devices, power banks, phones, laptops. If the power does go out, you want to stay connected to emergency information. Fuel your vehicle. Keep the tank at least half full. If you need to evacuate or help others, you don't want to be searching for an open service station. Know your local flood situation. If you are in a flood-prone area, know where the water goes when it rains heavily. Know your evacuation routes. Know where to go if you need to leave quickly. For elderly neighbours and mates in vulnerable situations, check on them. Make sure they re-prepared, offer assistance if needed. These systems affect everyone, but some people need extra support. If you're replanning outdoor activities this weekend across North Queensland, reconsider. This isn't weather to be camping, hiking or doing anything exposed. Reschedule if possible. If you must be out, have multiple exit strategies and stay aware of changing conditions. For those further south who aren't directly affected, this is still worth monitoring. Weather patterns can shift. Systems can behave unpredictably. Stay informed even if you are not in the immediate impact zone. The broader pattern shows active weather continuing across northern Australia through the next week or two. This low is just one system. There's likely to be additional development in the Coral Sea and Arafura Sea as we move deeper into the wet season. That S normal for this time of year. Northern Australia S wet season typically runs November through April. January and February are often the most active months for tropical development. We rewrite in that sweet spot now. The Indian Ocean dipole is currently neutral, which doesn't strongly favour or suppress tropical activity. The Madden-Julian oscillation is in a phase that supports convection over northern Australia. That AS meteorologists speak for saying conditions are ripe for storms and tropical systems. El Niño Southern Oscillation is trending toward neutral as well after a weak El Niño earlier in the season. That removes one inhibiting factor for tropical cyclone development. Put it all together and the next month or two could be quite active across the tropics. This current system probably won't be the last we track. For those in southern Australia dealing with heat and fire weather, your pattern changes next week. A cold front moves through bringing cooler conditions and possibly some rain to southern coastal areas that LLEs fire danger and provide relief from the heat. Tasmania, you're already feeling that southern chill. Overnight minimums below zero, frost across northern areas. That cold air mass extends north next week, bringing a break to the heat in Victoria and South Australia. Western Australia stays dry for now. 3 months without decent rain in many areas. That pattern looks to continue, unfortunately. No significant rain systems on the horizon for WA in the next week to 10 days. The national picture is fragmented. Active tropics, dry interior, fire weather in the south, cool change on the way for southern states. Each region dealing with its own challenges. Back to the tropical low one more time because that S, the main story. The key message is this. Significant tropical low developing in the Coral Sea. Impacts likely across far North Queensland and North Queensland this weekend into early next week. Heavy rain, strong winds, rough seas. Uncertainty remains about exact track and intensity. Northern areas from Cairns to Townsville need to be prepared. Southern areas from Mackay to Brisbane keep monitoring but don't panic. This probably stays north of you. Marine users get vessels secured by Friday. Don T be on the water Saturday or Sunday. The Bureau of Meteorology will issue warnings as the situation develops. Severe weather warnings likely by Friday. Tropical cyclone watch possible if the system intensifies more than currently expected. Pay attention to official warnings. They supersede anything I'm telling you here. This is a developing situation. Models will update. Forecasts will change. What I am telling you now is based on information available as of this evening. By tomorrow, we'll have better clarity on track and intensity. By Friday, we'll know with reasonable confidence what S coming. Don T, wait until Saturday to prepare. If you are in a potentially affected area, get ready now. Thursday and Friday are your preparation days. Saturday S when conditions deteriorate. One final thought. Many of you have lived through significant cyclones and tropical lows. Cyclone Yasi in 2011, Category 5 system that devastated parts of North Queensland. Cyclone Larry in 2006. These are the reference points for what a major system looks like. This current low is not forecast to reach those intensities. It's not another Yasi or Larry, but it still deserves respect. Even a weak tropical low can produce flooding rain, damaging winds and dangerous marine conditions. Don T underestimate it just because it's not a Category 3 cyclone. Take sensible precautions, stay informed, look after your mates and neighbours. That's the best approach to any weather event. event. For those outside the impact zone who've been asking about summer weather in general, it's been a mixed bag this year. Parts of Queensland too hot and humid, parts of New South Wales too dry. Southern states dealing with temperature swings. New Zealand S been copping it with multiple weather systems tracking across both islands. That S summer in Australia, though, it S never consistent, it S never predictable. One region S suffering through heat while another S dealing with floods. That S just the nature of our climate and geography. The best we can do is monitor the patterns, understand what S coming and prepare accordingly. That S what these forecasts are for, not to create panic, not to sensationalise, just to give you accurate information so you can make informed decisions. This tropical low is worth paying attention to if you are in North Queensland. It is worth monitoring if you are in southeast Queensland. For everyone else, it is background information that doesn't directly affect you right now. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website regularly. They'll have the most current warnings and forecasts. Local emergency services will provide specific guidance for your area if conditions warrant. Stay safe. Be prepared. Look after each other. That is the message. This system has potential to cause significant impacts in localised areas. With proper preparation and sensible precautions, those impacts can be minimised. I'll continue monitoring this situation and provide updates as the system develops. For now, that is what you need to know about the Coral Sea tropical